Happy New Year, swashbucklers! Let's try something different today. Turn it up, swashbucklers! You're listening to Under the Crossbones, episode number 171. My name is Phil Johnson. I am your host for the show and the ship's omniscient narrator. We're going to have some fun today. We're going to do something a little different today. Happy New Year. It's 2019. I hope you have a great 2019. I hope your holidays were good. What do we do now, right? We go back on the diet. We get the exercise program happening again. Try and get a few more of those belt loopholes happening, right? My belt is much, much tighter than it was a month ago. And so I'm going to be doing exactly all that stuff too. But I've got a fun show today for you that we'll talk about in a second. First, fun fact about the number 171. In Brazil, the number 170 known is a code word for fraud or like trying to fool someone into get something from that person. Like you say, oh, I'm going to 171 that guy. It means you're gonna defraud him somehow. Seems very piratey to me. Brazilian pirates would have 171 people all over the place. And if they did not comply, then we would get the Swiss term 171. And in the Swiss, for the Swiss, 171 means to die or die very fast. It's violent. Oof. So you can either Brazilian 171 and defraud them, and then if they don't comply with that, then you Swiss 171 them and you kill them. That's a happy way to start 2019, is it not? Yeah, here we are. All right, so you know all the websites, facebook.com/underthecrossbones, twitter.com/undercrossbones. You can get all the show notes for this episode at underthecrossbones.com/171. And there is going to be a ton of stuff in the show notes for this one. Lots of resources and videos and all sorts of cool stuff. So let me tell you what's going on here. I thought a new year, we try a little experimental episode here. This is not something that will be ongoing necessarily, but I think it'll be fun for today. And I thought I would try it this week because this show comes out on New Year's Day, and I figure there will be fewer people than normal listening. I hope that's not the case. I hope there's more people than normal listening. But if that's the case, then if this episode sucks, fewer people will hear it. See? I'm thinking ahead. That's why I always try out my new jokes at tiny shows where there's fewer people. All right, yes. So what we are going to do today, we have no guest on the show. It's just you and me today, and we're going to have some fun. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, no, it's just Phil. He's going to yammer for an hour about tour dates. No, of course I would not do that. But first, tour dates. January 2nd, Clayton Valley Bowl, Concord, California. January the 3rd, The Bistro in Hayward, California. January 12th, I'll be at Interfog Wine Bar, San Francisco, California. January 15th, the Throckmorton Theater in Mill Valley, California. January 17th, I'll be at The Office, Ukiah, California. January 19th, Trek Wine in Novato, California. And then I head out for a bunch of dates in Wisconsin and Minnesota. Go to underthecrossbones.com, click on that tour dates button. You can find out where I'm going to be near you, telling jokes, singing songs. There we go. See, we got through all the tour dates part. You probably didn't even have time to hit that fast forward button like I know you do. It's all right. So here's what we're going to do today. Like I said, it's just you and me, no guest on the show today. We are going to talk about the 1926 film, The Black Pirate. Now, I don't know if you've watched it or not, and if you have watched it, you will get a ton out of this episode. If you haven't seen it yet, you will want to see it after this. And yeah, there will be spoilers, but it's a 92-year-old movie, so I think we can spoil it. But even with what I've got for you here, you're still going to really, really enjoy watching it. It's a great film. I discovered it because I hadn't seen it before. I knew it was out there, kind of thing, but I rediscovered it when I was writing some jokes I was doing a corporate gig for a movie theater chain here in California that has been around since 1926. And as I was looking at movies in 1926, this popped up, and I was like, oh, this looks interesting. And I watched it, and I was like, oh, there's so much good stuff in here. So what we're going to do today is a deep dive into The Black Pirate from 1926 and find out, because a lot of things were invented for the pirate genre in this movie. We're going to talk about Douglas Fairbanks and what he was doing. There's all sorts of good stuff, all right? So lots happening in here. So I think we're just going to get into it, shall we? Let's. Okay, I am excited about this one, and I will do my best not to cough too much during this episode. I got the cough hanging on from the head cold I had a couple weeks ago, and it just hangs on in there, so we'll see how that goes. and good chance the FedEx guy is going to ring my doorbell at some point while we're doing this. Hopefully I'll be able to edit that out. But of course, they always come right then. All right, so let's get into it. The Black Pirate was released on March 8th, 1926 with a London premiere. It didn't premiere in Hollywood until May 14th, 1926, probably because they had to go by ship, I guess, between those two places. So they probably went from one premiere right to the next. It stars Douglas Fairbanks as the Black Pirate, the titular character. Billy Dove as Princess Isabel. Donald Crisp is the super stereotypical Scotsman called MacTavish. And Sam DeGrasse is what they call him the Pirate Lieutenant, except he mostly just seems surly and not very lieutenant-y. So we'll see where he comes into the story. So like I said, Wikipedia says the film was released March 8th, March 7th in London, and then the premiere was held on May 14th, 1926 at Grauman's Egyptian Theater in Hollywood. And if you're not familiar with it, the Egyptian is just down the street from its more famous cousin, the Chinese Theater. And the Chinese Theater, Grauman's Chinese Theater, is the one that has all the foot and the handprints in the cement. And that's the one where all the tourists go. The Egyptian Theater looks Egyptian, and it does not have hand and footprints in there. And actually, Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford, they were the first people to put their hand and footprints in there at the Chinese Theater. It's not called Grauman's anymore. I forget who owns it now, but everybody just knows it as the Chinese Theater. They were the first ones to put their hand and footprints in the cement there, which is a cool thing. And they're still there. You can still, they have very tiny hands and feet. We will find out later why they were the first ones, because they were popular people. My gosh, were they. So the premiere at the Egyptian Theater was a one-time event that actually was the premiere of two films. Mary Pickford's Sparrows was the first film, followed by The Black Pirate with Douglas Fairbanks. They were married at the time, and they were Hollywood's first power couple. So the double premiere absolutely made sense. Let's talk about Douglas Fairbanks here for a minute. The things he and his friends did in Hollywood still have reverberations in the movie business today. They were very influential people. So he was born Douglas Elton Thomas Ullman in 1883 in Denver, Colorado. And his parents were Hezekiah Charles Ullman. Ooh, there's an 1800s name you don't hear anymore. Hezekiah. And Ella Adelaide. Oh, such 1800s names. My gosh. His father was a lawyer and a mining investor. He had two half-brothers on his mother's side and one full brother, and Douglas was the youngest. His father skipped out on the family when Douglas was just 5 years old after finding out that Dougie's mom was getting some on the side. Yeah, she had already two sons from a previous marriage, two previous marriages, if I remember right. And so she was out and about in Denver, Colorado, getting some, and her husband found out. Hezekiah found out and jumped ship because. So Douglas and his older brother Robert were raised by their mother, and she gave them the last name Fairbanks after her first husband, even though she had just lost her third husband. Yeah, 3 husbands, which, yeah, no big deal. Why would you give him the first husband's last name, though? That seems weird. I could see if he decided to do that later as a stage name, but no, he grew up as Douglas Fairbanks, even though his last name should have been Ullman. Douglas started acting very young. He was doing amateur theater, going to an acting school there in Denver. He dropped out of high school at the age of 15 to go on a cross-country performance tour with an acting troupe run by Frederick Ward, who was an English Shakespearean actor who had moved to the U.S. in the late 1800s, I should say. As a little parallel there, my brother moved to Los Angeles when he was 15 to become an actor as well, and he did well. If you've ever seen the movie Carnosaur 2, yeah, go look it up. Go look up Carnosaur 2. My brother's the lead in that film. It's a fun one if you like the dinosaur movies, Jurassic Parky kind of stuff. Anyway, that has nothing to do with Douglas Fairbanks. So 2 years after he quits high school, goes on the road with Frederick Ward. He moves to New York, gets his first Broadway role in a show called Her Lord and Master in 1902, which I was not able to find a description for. In between acting jobs, he worked in a hardware store, as a clerk in a Wall Street office, as an Uber driver. I mean, of course, cars weren't that popular yet, so it was a horse-drawn cart known as a Huber. That's all a lie. It's a complete lie. In 1907, he married Anna Beth Sully, the daughter of a wealthy industrialist. I can't say that word. daughter of a wealthy industrialist, and in 1909 they had a son, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., who you may know from his own films like Little Caesar, not the pizza, Angels Over Broadway, and The Corsican Brothers, not the Cheech and Chong version. So he was a famous actor as well. He's probably the one we're more familiar with. In 1915, the family moved to Hollywood, where Douglas immediately put his plans to work to open a chain of yoga studios. Visions of wealthy industrialist daughters in yoga pants, forking over $39 a month, swimming through his head. He signed a contract. That's a lie. I lied again. He signed a contract with Triangle Pictures, and he began working under D.W. Griffith, who created groundbreaking film techniques and had just released the hella racist The Birth of a Nation. D.W. Griffith, more known now for his super racist film, The Birth of a Nation, than all the groundbreaking film techniques that he created, but influential nonetheless. His first film, Douglas Fairbanks, his first film was called The Lamb, and I have no idea what that's about either. A lot of these movies are hard to find. Some of them don't exist anymore, but his first movie was called The Lamb. It apparently showed off his athleticism that he would later put to good use in all of his action films, including The Black Pirate that we're going to talk about today. In 1916, Douglas met Mary Pickford at a party, and this is a thing. And they started hooking up on the down low. Now, remember, at this time, he is still married to Anna Beth Sully. And so this is 1916. They've been together about 9 years. He meets Mary Pickford at a party. They start hooking up. Mary Pickford was one of the two highest paid actors in Hollywood at the time, the other being Charlie Chaplin. And by 1918, Douglas Fairbanks had built himself up to being the third highest paid. So this is super like power couple stuff here. This is and like if it had been a threesome with Charlie Chaplin, holy cow, Hollywood would have exploded. For reference, Mary Pickford was in 1916 making $2,000 a week. Yeah, so good to see that I'm not even out earning someone from 100 years ago. That's fantastic, isn't it? Soon after that, she was the first actress to sign a $1 million 2-year contract with Adolf Zucker. In 1917, Fairbanks capitalized on his rising popularity by publishing a self-help book called Laugh and Live, which extolled the power of positive thinking and self-confidence in raising one's health, business, and social prospects. Some things just never change. If you're a celebrity, you will put out a self-help book or a autobiography or a book of essays if you can't write longer things. Anyway, there will be a link in the show notes to that book. It's on Gutenberg, and you can actually read Laugh and Live. It's all right there, and see what Douglas Fairbanks has to say in his self-help book. In 1919, Douglas Fairbanks, Mary Pickford, Charlie Chaplin, and D.W. Griffith formed United Artists, which gave them control over their own films and distribution. United Artists has been bought and sold a zillion times in the last 100 years and is currently owned by MGM, and it's called the United Artists Digital Studios. This has been a very influential studio all the way through movie history. It's pretty amazing. This was a super power move, too, by the biggest people in the entertainment industry. Think like when Jay-Z and Beyonce started Tidal a couple of years ago, except United Artists was successful. Ooh, burn on the hella rich people. I don't know. Tidal's doing okay, I guess. Also in 1919, Douglas Fairbanks granted his wife a divorce. Yeah, saw that coming. And was absolutely bent on marrying Mary Pickford. But she was still married to some other actor that she eventually divorced on March 2nd, 1920. Several decades later, that same date of March 2nd would see the birth of a great man, a fierce comedian and musician, and groundbreaking pirate podcaster. Me. Later that month, Douglas and Mary get married, and they become Hollywood's first power couple. Fortunately, the press didn't yet have the brilliant idea of giving them like a celebrity couple name like Brangelina or Bennifer, because those are stupid. They didn't call them Muglis or Derry or Ford Banks or whatever. And so after marrying, they moved into their famous Hollywood estate called Pickfair. Damn, they did it to themselves, didn't they? I guess they did. By this time, Douglas was getting tired of the romantic comedies he's been doing early in his acting career, and he had new ideas for a new style of costume adventure picture, which apparently was out of favor with the viewing public at that time. Like 1920, and people were already tired of stuff. How we still have reality TV? Can't we be tired of reality TV? By 1920, they were already tired of adventure pictures. Anyway, he had an idea for new, like over the top kind of costume adventure pictures. So over the next 7 years, Fairbanks would absolutely set the standard for swashbuckling films with The Mark of Zorro, The Three Musketeers, Robin Hood, The Thief of Baghdad, The Gaucho, and of course, The Black Pirate, which we will talk more about in just a minute. He also went on to define Hollywood institutions that we still have to this day. He helped start the Motion Picture Fund, which assists those in the industry who can't work or pay their bills. And I have had friends who've needed the Motion Picture Fund, and they've been very helpful to them. So that's a great thing. He and Mary Pickford were also the first to put their hand and footprints in the wet cement at Grauman's Chinese Theater, like I mentioned earlier. So there was that. He was also the first president of the Motion Picture Academy of Arts and Sciences and hosted the first Academy Awards in 1929. That night, they gave away 15 awards, and the entire ceremony lasted 15 minutes. And you thought they played them off too quick now. It's like, I'd like to thank my wife. Okay, shut up and sit down. 15 awards in 15 minutes, and Douglas Fairbanks was the host of that show. It obviously was not shown anywhere. It was just a private thing that they did for them. When talking became a thing in film, Douglas Fairbanks did not fare as well. He only did 4 talkies. He did The Taming of the Shrew, Reaching for the Moon, Mr. Robinson Crusoe, which maybe is something we should look at later, and The Private Life of Don Juan. His health had also been failing due to a lifelong smoking habit, and he just wasn't digging the talkie thing. Fairbanks and Mary Pickford, they both started stepping out on the side this time. Yeah. Mary started hooking up with a wealthy industrialist. These industrialists, man, they're just getting it all. And Douglas started hooking up with Sylvia Lady Ashley, who is a model, actress, and socialite, mostly known for marrying rich dudes. Douglas Fairbanks, 3 for 3 on the rich ladies, because his first wife was a rich lady too. Douglas Fairbanks was only number 2 for Lady Sylvia Lady Ashley, weird name. Douglas was only number 2 for her. Yeah, she stayed with him till he died, and then she married 3 other rich dudes. So there you go. Douglas Fairbanks died on December the 12th, 1939, at the age of 56 from a heart attack. 56, not very old. See what that smoking will do to you. So let's get a feel for what else was going on in the world of film and the wider world for some context on this one. I always think art needs to be put in the context of its times so that we can get the full meaning of everything that's going on. So The Black Pirate comes out in March of 1926, and while it was very successful, it was not one of the top 10 grossing films of the year. The top grossing film that year was called Aloma of the South Seas, starring Gilda Gray as an exotic dancer, and it made $3 million. Yeah, or as we call it now, the catering budget. Even Mary Pickford's movie Sparrow snuck into the number 9 spot for the box office that year, making $966,000. Now, according to Wikipedia, the budget for The Black Pirate was $1.3 million, and while it didn't make it into the top 10 for that year, it did eventually make $1.8 million domestically. So, pulled in a good $500,000 profit, and that was through United Artists. So, that $500,000 profit stayed with the artists, which is a very cool thing. This same year, sound is starting to creep into movies. Warner Brothers, they released Don Juan and another film called The Better Owl, featuring soundtracks that were played on 33 1/3 RPM records called Vitaphone. Yeah, that's right, you vinyl hipsters. Feel the warmth. They were playing the soundtrack on a record with the needle, the whole thing. That same year, Fox is also releasing the first sound on film attempts with Movie Tone newsreels. They had a different system for doing it. Al Jolson filmed a project called A Plantation Act with sound that was a test film for The Jazz Singer. And The Jazz Singer, of course, is considered the first talkie, but there was a little bit of talkie happening before that. And also, the oldest surviving animated feature that was released that year in Germany called The Adventures of Prince Ahmed. This is a full 12 years before Disney releases Snow White in 1938. So Germany, way ahead on the animated features. There wasn't a lot in between those two. And come to think of it, I have not seen The Adventures of Prince Ahmed. I've seen clips of it, little frames and things like that. But I haven't watched the whole thing. I should do that. Other things happening in the world right there in 1926. The U.S. is right in the middle of Prohibition. Al Capone is at the height of his powers. Francisco Franco becomes the General of Spain. Prince Elizabeth Alexandra Mary of York, later Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom, is born in Mayfair, London. So I'm pretty sure that's the current queen. I don't know, so many Elizabeths. But yeah, Elizabeth II. She's born 1926. There's a giant coal miner strike happening in the UK. And let's see, in the United States Congress, they've passed the Air Commerce Act, which licenses pilots and planes, because those were a new thing back then. The National Bar Association incorporates in the United States, so they started regulating lawyers. The sudden death of popular film actor and sex symbol Rudolph Valentino at the age of just 31 causes mass grief and hysteria around the world. People just went insane when that dude died. 31. That's crazy. The League of Nations Slavery Convention abolishes all type of slavery in 1926. A. Milne, children's book, The Winnie the Pooh, is published in London, featuring the eponymous bear for the first time. 1926 for Winnie the Pooh. And also in 1926, Harry Houdini died. So that gives you kind of a context for what's going on in the world in 1926. Now, when you think of silent films, and this is a silent film, the next thing you think about is their vibrant color, right? No, of course not. But in this case, you'd be right to. Maybe not vibrant color, but definitely color. The Black Pirate was the third film to be shot in Technicolor. It's a silent film in Technicolor. And that was one of the first things that drew me to it. And I was like, oh, I got to dive deeper on this. So Hollywood had a very love-hate relationship with the use of color in films in the 1920s. Cecil B. DeMille in 1923 said, color movies diverted interest from narrative and action, offended the color sensitivities of many, and cost too much. And how much you want to bet it was that last one that was the main problem for him. Even Douglas Fairbanks had a problem with it, saying that color was like putting rouge on the lips of Venus de Milo. However, even though we think of most Greek statues as white, they were often painted in bright colors originally. Yeah, the original colors of the Venus de Milo are unknown, but she might definitely absolutely have had rouge on her lips. So suck on that, Fairbanks. Right now, the Venus de Milo is white. I saw it, but originally it had some color. We just don't know what it was. Fairbanks argued that color took the mind of the spectator away from the picture itself, making him conscious of the mechanics, the artificiality of the whole thing, so that he no longer lived in the story with the characters. Now, I don't think that's true of color. I do think it's true of all this super high-def 4K stuff that happens now. Watch the average movie in your super high-def 4K and tell me everything doesn't look like it's done on a movie set. That takes me out. I turned off the high def on my giant stupid TV. So that everything looks like a movie again. But color, I don't think does that. But they did also think that color films would cause retinal fatigue and eye damage because, looking at a color painting too long could totally mess you up. I don't know why they thought this. It seems ridiculous to us now, but they actually thought color films would cause eye damage. So before making The Black Pirate, Fairbanks hired two USC professors, Doctors A. Ray Irvine and M.F. Wyman. I guess everybody likes their initials at USC. He hired them to conduct a series of tests to study the relative amount of eye fatigue, nausea, and headaches generated by watching black and white versus color films. And they calculated the fatigue in terms of the decline in a viewer's visual acuity as the result of these screenings. And those results were then in turn compared to the loss of acuity resulting from just reading a book. The researchers discovered that viewers experienced a greater drop in visual acuity after viewing black and white as opposed to color films, and that reading a book for half the time spent watching a film resulted in even greater eye strain. So there you go. Reading is bad. Stop it. Reading's not bad, but it will apparently do worse for your eyes than a good old color movie. So whenever back in school, when we had to write a book report and you just watch the movie instead, oh man, I wish I'd have known that fact. No, I had to watch the movie because it's less eye strain. That would have been so great. My girlfriend, that's all she did in school. And so Fairbanks, used to being a man willing to change his mind, especially about wives, decided to make The Black Pirate in color, saying that color is the very theme and flavor of piracy. I don't know what that means either. The very theme and flavor of piracy. Not a clue, but you do you, Dougie. You do you. So he spent 6 months and $125,000 filming color test shots of sets, costumes, and makeup to see how they would look in this two-color Technicolor. So let's talk about Technicolor here a little bit. The very, very first Technicolor film happened in 1917 and was made by Technicolor using what they called Process 1. The film was called The Gulf Between, and the very first showing was for the American Institute of Mining Engineers. Because when you think about a group of people who would be interested in groundbreaking art, it's got to be mining engineers. No, they're just interested in groundbreaking. That's all, not groundbreaking art. That's a terrible pun. It had a limited tour of eastern cities in 1917, mostly to garner interest with producers and exhibitors, but it was such a giant pain in the ass, this Technicolor Process 1, that nobody wanted it. Only a few frames of that film even exist today, that film, The Gulf Between. There's only a few frames left. Apparently, it would just it was a giant pain. They had to have a guy there that knew what he was doing to put the two slides of film back in the right place, or everything got blurry, and it was just, so nobody wanted it. 1922, The Toll of the Sea was the first two-color Technicolor film to have a wide release, and that was followed by Wanderer of the Wasteland in 1924, and then The Black Pirate in 1926. Now, there were also a few Technicolor scenes in The Ten Commandments from 1923, The Phantom of the Opera from 1925, and Ben-Hur, also in 1925. Those are all big, super epic-y movies, aren't they? Yeah. And this is, that was Process 2 used on those. So Technicolor originally existed in a two-color red and green system. In Process 1, which was 1916, a prism beam slitter behind the camera lens exposed two consecutive frames of a single strip of black and white negative film simultaneously, one behind a red filter and the other behind a green filter. And because the two frames were being exposed at the same time, the film had to be photographed and projected at twice the normal speed. Exhibition required a special projector with two apertures, one for the red filter, one for the green filter, two lenses, and an adjustable prism that aligned the two images on the screen. This is the one that caused all that giant pain in the butt because you needed special equipment, you needed a special projectionist that knew how to keep the thing running correctly. And so it did not work, and nobody liked it. This was what they call an additive color process, which means that it mixed shades of red and green to create the colors on the screen. So, convinced that there was no future in additive color processes, Technicolor instead focused their attention on subtractive color processes. Think of it like if you use all the colors in the crayon box on the same time, it comes out to black, right? This culminated in what would eventually be known as Process 2 in 1922. In the later 1900s, it was commonly called by the misnomer two-strip Technicolor, which I will probably call it here as well. As before, the special Technicolor camera used a beam splitter that simultaneously exposed two consecutive frames of a single strip of black and white film, one behind a green filter, one behind a red filter. The difference was that the two-component negative was now used to produce a subtractive color print because the colors were physically present in the print, and you didn't need special projection equipment, and the correct registration of the two images did not depend on the skill of a skilled projectionist. So, the frames exposed behind the green filter were printed on one strip of black and white film. The frames exposed behind the red filter printed on another strip. After development, each print was toned to a color nearly complementary to that of the filter. Orange and red for the green filtered images, cyan and green for the red filtered images. Unlike tinting, which adds a uniform veil of color to the entire image, toning chemically replaces the black and white silver image with transparent coloring matter so that the highlights remain clear or nearly clear. The dark areas are strongly colored and the intermediate tones are colored proportionally. So the two prints made on film stock, half the thickness of regular film, were then cemented together back to back to create a projection print. But because the film was constantly exposed to the intense light of the project gate, the projection gate, it would get warped and bubbly. And this is what they call cupping. So when it wore out, it was sent back to Technicolor to be flattened again, and Technicolor would send them a new print to use in the meantime. So there was loads of shipping back and forth and all that kind of stuff. And if you did not quite understand what all that meant, me neither. I was reading it from my notes so that we get it all in there. And if you did understand, explain it to the rest of us. I kind of get it, but and they don't use this Technicolor 2. There was Technicolor Process 3, Technicolor Process 4. Now everything is done digitally, and they don't have to worry about mailing all those films all over the place. So, nice for them. But we were using Technicolor Process 2, 1926, for The Black Pirate. So, let's get into the swashbuckling masterpiece that is The Black Pirate. And I don't know if I need to say this for a 92-year-old movie, but spoiler alert. We're going to spoil the crap out of this thing. Pretty sure there's not a sequel on the horizon, so, just dig in and watch the movie after if you haven't seen it. And we're going to talk about stuff in here that I think is going to really make you want to see it again if you have, and for the first time if you haven't. So according to Hollywood legend, the genesis of the film happened when Douglas Fairbanks was having a discussion with child actor Jackie Coogan about Howard Pyle's Book of Pirates that defines so much of the way we think about pirates looked, even though they probably didn't. And at the time, Book of Pirates was only 5 years old, having been first published in 1921. So I know a lot of us are familiar with the Howard Pyle book, but we think of it as super old. At the time, it was like a new bestseller. By the way, you may know Jackie Coogan both as the Kid in Charlie Chaplin's film called The Kid, and also as Uncle Fester in the original Addams Family TV show. Yeah, that guy had a nearly 70-year career before he passed away in 1986. Can you imagine being in a Chaplin film and then being on a TV show? Amazing. But Douglas Fairbanks didn't stop there. His pirate world of the film was thoroughly researched. Costuming is comparatively easy, but he insisted on extensive background information about the habits of pirate, their caste system, the technicalities of rigging 17th century ships, the dress and customs of non-pirate seafarers, of which there are some, and probably researched from a lot of the same flawed resources that everyone else used at the time. So that's going to, just contribute to a lot of the myths that we still hold. So the film opens with the full credits, which still amazes me. Now, with the credits at the end, people split before they're over, unless there's like a Marvel-style stinger at the end. Marvel finally figured out a way to get everybody to stay through the credits to at least acknowledge the hard work of all those people. They make you wait for an extra 30 seconds of Avengers at the end. That's how. On the opening credits scene, it says story by Elton Thomas, which, of course, is Douglas Fairbanks' middle two names. I have no idea why he used a pen name instead. Or, I don't know, maybe it's like when a comedy club or when a comic calls a comedy club pretending to be their own agent. It's a terrible idea, but people have done it. Not me, but people have done it. They also leave the credit cards, the title cards, up for a long time. Like the first one is up for a full 30 seconds. And you're like, yeah, I've read it. I don't know if people read slower back then or what, but man, they last for a long time on the screen. This movie would be a whole bunch shorter if the titles were shorter. Anyway. On the second screen, we see that the production's general manager is Robert Fairbanks. Yeah, we have to assume that's his older brother, who, according to IMDb, worked on a bunch of Douglas Fairbanks films. Nepotism alive and well in Hollywood, even from the beginning. What's amazing is that the entire credited cast and crew is just 28 people. Look at the list of credits you see on any average movie now, and how many hundreds of people it takes to make a film now. 28 people made this movie. Now, there's a ton of extras in the film. They don't get credited. Normal for that line of work, But even having just 28 people to complete a film of this magnitude, amazing. I've seen low-budget indie films with a bigger crew than this. And go take a look at the credits for the latest superhero movie. Go see Aquaman. Don't go see Aquaman. Walk in, sneak into the theater at the end of Aquaman, and you will see the population of a small country worked on it. Amazing to get a film done with just 28 people. I haven't seen Aquaman yet, but I hear it's a drag. So go in, sneak in, just watch the credits. After the credits, they start into some general setup for the film, and there's a card that reads like this. A page from the history and lives of the most bloodthirsty pirates who ever infested the southern seas. And they do that in 6 different fonts. Yeah, I can hear graphic designers crying even as I say that. Horrendous. But that's the way they start the film. And then interminably long read times for these cards. People must have been reading slower in those days. I'm just picturing like a theater full of people holding their fingers up to the screen, underlining the words like, sound it out, Stanley, pirate. Ugh. The next screen, and this was the one that gets me, the next screen reads this way. Being an account of buccaneers in the Spanish Main, the Jolly Roger, golden galleons, bleached skulls, buried treasure, the plank, dirks and cutlasses, scuttled ships, marooning, desperate deeds, desperate men, and even on this dark soil, romance. Which they basically could have just put up a card that goes, so hey everyone, pirate stuff, right? This movie was just chock full of pirate stuff. Don't you worry. Yeah, we got pirate stuff coming out the yin-yang on this one. And he will get the girl at the end. So it was just like, here's a list of pirate things. And in the movie we go. So now that we've set the stage, the next card tells us it was the custom of these pirates to subdue their prey, loot the ship, bind their captives, and blow them up. So right off the bat, we know these dudes are bloodthirsty psychopaths and or very stupid pirates. Because they don't take the ship or recruit the ranks. No, they just blow the whole damn thing up. But they had to do that because it's a plot point later on. But hey, had they gone to today's first sponsor, Captain Billy Bob's Pirate School, they'd have known better. Are you looking to increase your income and be able to work from anywhere in the world? Captain Billy Bob's Pirate School can help you do that. Captain Billy will show you the 7 secrets to squeezing more loot out of every capture, the #1 tip for not forgetting where you buried it, and even how to outsource your pirating for pennies on the dollar to their pirate hiring centers in Bangladesh and India. So you can relax with your toes in the sand on a Caribbean island with a rum drink in your hand while you're making money hand over hook with your new passive pirate business. Call now for your free brochure on their turnkey pirating solutions to 1-800-966. I just made all this up. Yeah, that's not our sponsor today. Of course not. We're sponsored by Pirata Clothing. Yeah, and they got a brand new website that is a pirate utopia of shirts, hats, clothing, swimwear, and more, all steeped in the lore of pirates and treasure. Perfect for your next Caribbean cruise or trip to the Keys. And new gear added weekly. So go check them out. That's pirataclothing.com. Be sure to click the ship wheel on the website to get in Blackbeard's treasure hunt. And that's it. Get yourself some pirate clothing. All that pirate clothing you didn't get for Christmas, here's where you go get it. Go to pirataclothing.com. And you can get exclusive discounts when you text the word pirate to 21000. Text the word pirate to 21000. They will send you discounts. Super easy. pirataclothing.com. Okay, back to our story. The film opens on the pirate captain played by Anders Randolph, and he and his crew are collecting the jewelry from a pile of dead bodies on the ship they've just captured. Mind you, pre-Hays Code, so they can get away with a pile of dead bodies in the opening scene. We then pan over to see that the survivors have been tied to the mast. They're getting ready for the big boom. There's then an overly long scene of the pirates offloading cargo from the ship to the rowboats to take back to their own ship. That's the thing with acting manual labor. You can't. It's actual manual labor. And while extra work pays like this, extra work pays the same as most manual labor, but the craft services table is better. But when you see it, you'll just be like, yeah, those dudes are actually working. So we come back to the victim's side to the mast, and one of them pulls a ring out from under his shirt and swallows it. His attempt to keep it from the pirates, right? Even though they're going to blow him up. Doesn't matter. The captain, upon seeing this, sends one of his men to cut it out of him with a knife. And this is where the silent part of the film works to their favor. The crewman walks off screen for about 10 seconds and returns with the ring and blood all over his hands and knife. If it had sound, there would have had to been a whole bunch of screaming and stuff. Besides, I'm not sure you could cut a ring out of someone's gut in 10 seconds. Yeah, Hollywood magic. So then a my mouth, face, not working. So then a particularly maniacal-looking pirate lays a powder train around the victims, and the pirates all head off the ship so as not to be blown to bits. It's at this point where you start to wonder if they're shooting on location or not, and it turns out, no. They had their own Pickford Fairbanks studios. Power couple move, right? She was making her money, so I guess her name comes first. She was making more money, I should say. They built a huge 70,000-gallon water tank on the lot to do most of the waterborne scenes. And the waves were created with airplane propellers. There is one later scene towards the end of the film that was shot on location in Catalina Island off the coast of California, which, if you've never been, Catalina is beautiful. Worth a trip out there. So they're using parts of full-size ships along with smaller models to get the job done in the tank. The two-strip Technicolor process doesn't do the color blue, so the sky and the water do tend to get washed out a little bit, but everything else is in color. Back into the story, we see the powder train lit, follow it into the powder room, and it blows up a small model of the ship. Boom, next scene. Next, we see the pirates head back to their ship, and then we flash over to a desert island where Douglas Fairbanks is dragging a partially conscious body up onto the beach. Somehow, they have survived the ship blowing up beneath them, probably because it was a tiny model that they weren't on. Back on the pirate ship, the crew's divvying up the loot, and after 10 minutes of violence, it's time for a little comic relief. So 4 pirates are standing around a container that seems to be moving of its own accord, and upon opening it, they find a small monkey. To this day, monkeys being the prime animal comic relief to play against pirates, right? It keeps coming back. They fight over who gets to keep the monkey and decide to draw lots for it. This is a procedure that will come back to haunt a certain princess later in the film. Mind you, after this, we never see the monkey again. Probably a short-term monkey rental from the monkey rental place, but it does not appear anymore in the movie. Back up on deck, we see the three main pirates, the captain, the pirate lieutenant, played by Sam DeGrasse, and MacTavish, the very stereotypically Scottish one-armed pirate, played by Donald Crisp. The captain nearly kills a random pirate looking over the shoulder, and MacTavish stays the captain's hand, setting up him to be the guy with a heart, right? They're setting up his character. He's going to be the good pirate. Donald Crisp was a director as well as an actor, and had directed previous Douglas Fairbanks films like Son of Zorro. He claimed he was supposed to be the original director of The Black Pirate rather than Albert Parker, but was pushed out allegedly, because Fairbanks was annoyed that Crisp had directed his son, Junior, in a film called Man-Bait. I have no idea what Man-Bait is, but since Man-Bait didn't come out till the following year, in 1927, that argument just doesn't make much sense. And if Dougie was that pissed off, he probably wouldn't have given Crisp a lead role in the film anyway. More likely is that Crisp just wasn't able to handle directing a full Technicolor film since it was such a new process. It was a different animal, So so much that they needed even 2 complete sets of wardrobe in slightly different colors to account for how the film would react to interior versus exterior shots. So there was a lot of extra stuff to be done on there. Back on the beach, the semi-conscious guy gives Fairbanks a signet ring of some sort and then immediately becomes no longer conscious. And here, Fairbanks gives a classic melodramatic fist to the sky, I'll get you scurvy villains performance. So even after watching the film a couple of times, it's not super clear that the dead guy is his father, but I'm pretty sure he's supposed to be. Maybe he should have given him the ring and 2 forms of ID so we'd know better. That would have been helpful. As it happens, the pirate captain and a few of his most trusted men have landed on the same island to bury their share of the treasure. Obviously, not knowing that they could get a better interest rate at a bank. There's terrible interest rates at the bank of dirt hole on a deserted island. Doesn't make sense. So they go through this complex bit of pacing off the directions on their map, and then a pirate with a peg leg stomps around until he finds where it sinks in. A little comic relief there, They dig up this small chest with a key and some other maps in it, and then 2 other pirates take that key and treasure down under some water into a cave where there's a vault. It makes for a somewhat less obvious version of burying the treasure than just throwing some sand on top of it and hoping for the best. So I thought that was a pretty interesting way of doing it. It's not, we usually just think they're just going to pile some dirt on it, but no, in a cave, under the water, vault in a cave. So that works. While Fairbanks is watching them do this, he grabs a piece of driftwood and carves a message into it that says, "My father, I solemnly swear to bring thy murderers to justice." And it seems like a lot of work for a message that his father isn't going to see because he's dead. But it makes for some good exposition. So that's why. As the pirates come back from the underwater vault, we see the captain and his lieutenant planning to get rid of them and a card that says, "Dead men tell no tales." Yeah, lest we think that Disney created that phase, the vintage of this film tells us otherwise. But in fact, Dead Men Tell No Tales goes way back, way farther back, and predates the golden age of piracy even. So, the Latin phrase mortui non mordem was used by Plutarch in part 3 of the life of Pompey, sometime between 46 and 120 AD, in a section of the book covering Pompey's return to Rome during the reign of Julius Caesar. Mortui non mordem, when translated word for word, is dead men don't bite. However, the phrase is used to underscore the belief that killing one's enemies or victims is the surest way for them to never speak of what happened. And as such, the phrase mortui non mordem really means dead men tell no tales. So if you're looking for some Latin phrasing to put on your Jolly Roger, try that one out for size. It's mentioned again in the year 1250 by a Persian poet known as Sheikh Sadi of Shiraz. This was his advice on how to deal with quacks and charlatans. Yeah, so I finished The Rogue. Oh, this is the quote from his writing there. So I finished the rogue, notwithstanding his wails, with stones, for men, dead men, as you know, tell no tales. I kind of butchered that, but you get the idea. So that's 1250 by a Persian poet saying dead men tell no tales. Thomas Bacon, not Bacon, Thomas Bacon used it in 1560. John Dryden used it in a play in 1681. William Cobbett used it in a new article in 1797, a news article. The Star and Sentinel newspaper used it in an article in 1882. And in Chapter 11 of Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, Israel Hands uses the original phrase of dead men don't bite. So it's all wrapped up in there. All that said, it's probable that some pirate somewhere actually uttered the phrase, dead men tell no tales. And if they didn't, well, they missed out on a cool saying, and they should have used it. So, as the captain and his lieutenant are getting ready to take out the other 5 guys that know where the treasure is buried, old Dougie strolls over the hill and catches their attention. He says he wants to hook up with their crew, and MacTavish gives him the once-over. Hilariously, MacTavish's dialogue cards are written with a semblance of a Scottish accent. I'm not even going to try and do it for you, because to do it here, because my Scottish accent is terrible, and so was their written Scottish accent. Just ridiculous. But if Captain Juan Medina Heinrich Gunther Matteo Burrito Liechtenstein were here, he might say it as, "Would you now? What be your qualifications?" Remember that guy from a couple episodes ago? Fairbanks, still nameless character, asks who their best fighter is and then challenges the captain to a fight. And so ensues quite a well-done and exciting 4-handed sword fight, each man with 2 swords. This was choreographed by Fred Cavins. Cavins and Fairbanks were very, very picky about the sword fights in their films, and they've done them before in The Three Musketeers and Robin Hood, things like that. They knew that using just only real fencing techniques would not be exciting to watch. And if you've ever been to a fencing tournament, you know how incredibly boring they can be. Yeah, oh boy are they. I went to one in 1993 to support my friend Denny, who was competing, and holy cow, the things we'll sit through for a friend. Wow. But they also knew it was worth it. He's a good dude. But they also knew that pure movie swordplay wouldn't look real enough. All the clingy, clangy, big swipey kind of stuff. So they tried for this happy medium of both. Enough clingy, clangy stuff. Silent clingy, clangy stuff. They really should have had a dialogue card that just said clingy, clangy. That would have been great. It would have predated Batman's pow bap bubbles by decades. Anyway, they used enough of the Hollywood-style swordplay to keep it interesting, but enough of the real thing so that it looked like they were actually trying to do each other in. So Fairbanks eventually kills the captain when he wedges a sword into a rock and then forces the captain backwards on it. I don't know how the captain wouldn't have seen him do that, because it took a few seconds. I don't know if he stopped for some water or what. He was like, I'm going to take a break while that guy sticks a sword in the rock. But it's still a great sword fight, and it will really make it'll make you really not appreciate Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader going at it in 1977. They look like 2 old men fighting in that movie. So most of the other pirates seem overjoyed that he's killed the captain for some reason. I mean, not since Dolly Parton, Lily Tomlin, and Jane Fonda knocking off Dabney Coleman have I seen characters this excited to see the boss killed. All except the lieutenant, who will remain his nemesis throughout the film. He says he can join the crew, but, quote, "There's more to our trade than sword tricks." So Fairbanks says he'll prove himself by taking the next ship they see single-handedly. We're about to ramp up the stunt work. Something fierce here. So they run across a merchantman that looks suspiciously like a tiny model ship. Fairbanks sneaks over in a sloop while the rest of the pirate crew preps the cannons just in case he blows it. Douglas Fairbanks was known for his athleticism and his stunts, and he does some pretty wild stuff to get on the ship. You just have to watch it to see, because if I try and explain it or describe it, it's not going to do it justice. So you just have to see the film. He ties up the captain of the merchantman, and then we get 2 really classic stunts here. First, he cuts the rigging line for one of the sails that pulls him up into the rigging. In actuality, they filmed him swinging down from the top of the rigging and then ran the thing in reverse. There's also a hidden backwards message of Paul is dead and don't eat gluten. No. So they did a backwards film thing, so it looks like the rope pulls him up into the rigging. Then the second classic stunt is known as the blade break. He jams a dagger into the sail, slides down, ripping the sail clean through as he slides down. Now, in real life, if you're taking a ship, this seems like a really stupid idea, because once you own the ship, well, you're going to have to repair that sail, and then you're really just decreasing your ROI on the whole project, right? But since these super bright pirates are just going to blow the thing up anyway, I suppose it doesn't make much difference. By the way, they did try the blade break on an episode of Mythbusters and found that it did not work well at all. The knife would have to be exactly just sharp enough to get through the seams in the sail, but not dull enough to actually slow the fall. So I've linked a video of the Mythbusters episode in the show notes if you'd like to see it. Again, that's underthecrossbones.com/171. The video will be right there. In the case of Douglas Fairbanks here in our film, the pointy end of the knife was attached to a rig on the other side of the sail out of sight of the camera. And they also tilted the sails in an angle using forced perspective to make it seem like a straight drop. But this is the scene where this move was invented. The blade break was invented in this movie, so good for them. Pretty sure that one comes back in like Cutthroat Island and a bunch of other places. So he then takes out a couple of dudes on this seemingly sparsely crewed merchantman, and then the rest of the crew finally comes up from their quarters, all in nightcaps and robes, which, considering this attack appears to be happening during the middle of the day, really signals how lazy this merchant crew is, because they all seem to be taking a nap. Sure, a midday nap will help you get through that long afternoon, but, the nightcap, little overkill for a midday nap. The big pointy ones, the ridiculous. I don't know why anybody wore pointy nightcaps. It doesn't seem like it would aid your sleep in any way. Just make you look like a clown. So then Fairbanks is up on the forecastle yelling some stuff at them without the benefit of dialogue cards, and turns the small cannons on them, and they all throw their hands up and surrender. And really, in a minimum wage gig, are you going to try and stop the pirate that boards your ship? Of course not. No, you're going to let the company insurance take care of it. But they do give up really awfully fast. Like, I don't know what he yelled at them because there's no dialogue cards, but whatever it was very persuasive. So the pirates sail up beside, all cheery and such, and they proceed to loot the merchantman. And watching the extras do more manual labor, we see Fairbanks looking worried that he's actually just taken an innocent ship and hasn't yet figured out how to avenge his father's death. So he actually just sort of, by accident, became a pirate instead of avenging his father's death. So one of the pirates spots a lady and her handmaid down in the hold. So far, this film is really failing the Bechdel test, and it's not going to get any better for the ladies, let me assure you. There's only 2 ladies in this movie, and they are in danger constantly. Fairbanks then gets the idea and calls the crew around, and with some very elaborate arm gestures, says, look, we take the ship. It's still in perfect shape, obviously not remembering that he's destroyed every sail in the vicinity with his little stunts, because he does the blade break a couple times. And he says, what if we don't blow the ship up? And they go, whoa! And he goes, right? And they go, whoa! Wait, why? And he informs them that they could get a ransom for it instead, because duh. As I said earlier, this is either really, really early in the golden age, or these are just some dumb-ass pirates that had not thought of this before. Like a group of guys that has a few kilos of cocaine, and they finally go, hey, I bet we could sell this stuff, maybe on eBay or something. While he's giving his big Captain Obvious speech, some of the other pirates discover the girl, and the same kind of chase they took out of the ride at Disneyland ensues on the ship. And they don't even try a good pickup line on her or anything. Instead, they hearken back to the long-lost monkey and decide to draw lots for her, because they're gentlemen. And, of course, that dastardly lieutenant wins the girl, right? So the girl, played by Billy Dove, she does some classic damsel in distress acting through the rest of this movie. Meanwhile, McTavish is back in the ransom play up on the deck. And the pirates are buying it, but then Fairbanks sees the girl on the lower deck, pulls her up, proclaims her a princess, and says they'll hold her as a hostage for the ransom. And as he's talking to the assembled crowd of pirates here, I don't know what it is. He really looks like a New Jersey street hood, like trying to talk his way out of a fix. There was something about the mannerisms. I don't know what it was. And it made me wonder what Douglas Fairbanks' voice actually sounded like. Because to me, it looks like he's going, hey, we'll hold the full ransom, you dumb mugs. So I went looking for a clip of one of his few talkie films. Remember, he only made 4. And this is a clip from 1930's Reaching for the Moon. Here's what Douglas Fairbanks' speaking voice actually sounded like.
We land in 4 hours, and I may never see you again. I'm going back to New York. I suppose I shouldn't say this to you after what I heard this afternoon, but there was a reason why I left New York at a moment's notice, and there was a reason why I hadn't taken my eyes off you. And there was a reason why I gave up everything I thought was best in the world. That reason was that I found myself for the first time in my life in love. Madly, desperately in love with you.
So now you can picture the black pirate going, "Let the ransom be 50,000 pieces of 8." I don't know. It just doesn't sound super piratey to me. I think he was good in the silent films. So there's some back and forth with the lieutenant about the girl, but eventually the crew sides with Douglas Fairbanks and decides to elect him captain when the ransom ship returns. The main guys create an agreement saying the girl will be returned spotless and unharmed if the ransom shows up by noon the next day, which seems like a short window when you're dealing with sailing ships, but whatever. It's a 90-minute movie. We can't wait 10 days, but there's got to be, but if there's no ransom, they're going to kill her and dump her overboard. Again, why? Because they're gentlemen. And finally here, on this agreement, he signs the thing, the Black Pirate. Dun, dun, dun! And now we know that he's the Black Pirate. He doesn't even have a name. And for some reason, nobody was like, what the hell kind of name is that? You know, why not the pirate with the red scarf or the pirate with rickets? The rest of us have actual names, dude. That's Mac and Steve. That's Wendell, Hector, Monty, Beauregard. He should have felt dumb signing the thing, the Black Pirate. That's a terrible nickname for a pirate. That sounds like I don't think that guy's a pirate because he just called himself the Black Pirate. He's Caucasian, first of all, and nobody would call themselves the Black Pirate. I just feel like the rest of the crew would be going, I don't know. I'm going to guess he's not a pirate. But now, at least I can call him by his pirate name. So, Black Pirate gives the ransom note to the guy who's in charge of collecting from the captured ship. And he makes sure he sees his little signet ring that his pops gave him. You're like, hey man, wink wink, right? And meanwhile, the lieutenant, whose name we still don't know, even though he signed the thing too, we just don't see what he signed, he tells one of his guys to get on the ransom ship and blow it up. Man, these dudes are really into blowing up ships. They get itchy if they don't get to blow something up, you know? But also, the ransom won't come back, and he gets the girl, right? And frankly, I don't think he's going to be a very good boyfriend to her. I just don't. I think he's got problems. I think there's going to be an episode of Cops in their future. As the ransom ship is leaving, Black Pirate shoots a note wrapped in the signet ring to the guy in charge of the ransom and tells him to show the governor the ring, send a detachment of his soldiers. Now, things are about to get crazy, but let's take a quick intermission, shall we? Under the Crossbones is sponsored today, of course, by Pirate Radio of the Treasure Coast, WKKC-DB, playing the best music of today's hits and yesterday's classics, and Pirate Radio Talk, playing the best pirate shows, including Under the Crossbones, 24/7, all commercial free. To listen, just go to pirateradioTheTreasureCoast.com for the music station, or you can grab the Pirate Radio WKKC-DB app in your favorite app store for also the music station. Or go to pirateradiotc.com or pick up the Pirate Radio Talk app in your favorite app store. You can also scream at your Alexa device or your Google device and just say, okay, Alexa, or hey, Google, or whatever you do, and it will play Pirate Radio of the Treasure Coast for you if you ask it to nicely. Be nice to it. Don't be all, be nice to your Alexa and your Google device, and it'll be nice to you. All brought to you by iTreasure Radio, the very best digital media from independently owned stations at iTreasureRadio.com. All right, so now we get crazy. One of the pirates tries to get access to the princess, and he's thwarted, right? And then there's a bunch of alpha male, come at me, bro, action to keep everybody towing the line until the ransom ship returns. Then there's a pirate dinner scene on a set that looks a whole lot like the Key and Peele pirate sketch where they sing the feminist pirate shanty. I don't know if you've seen it. If you haven't seen it, there's a video in the show notes. It's very, very funny, this Key and Peele sketch. But the set looks exactly like this set from the Black Pirate. So thought you might want to see that. That's in the show notes. Click through to see that. Meanwhile, Black Pirate, he has sent MacTavish in with a note to the princess that says, do you like me? Check yes or no below. No, actually, it says he's going to get her off the ship before the poop hits the fan. And she, of course, is very happy at seeing this, though there's a little bit of like a comic relief there with a crying woman and a guy trying to hand her a note. McTavish seems to be the comic relief guy happening at this point, and it seems like an inappropriate time for laughs. But what do you do? That's what they did. Back on the ransom ship, the powder monkey that snuck over there laying the powder train to blow the thing up and looking real super happy about it. Like, dude really has a problem with this powder thing and should get some help because he's a pyro, obviously. Meanwhile, the head ransom guy is just brooding. A lot of brooding in this part of the movie. The lieutenant is brooding. The ransom guy is brooding. The princess is brooding. Whole lot of brooding going on, which was the original title of that Jerry Lee Lewis song. But Sam Phillips at Sun Records was like, whole lot of brooding going on. Just doesn't make the kids want to dance. Can we make it a whole lot of shaking going on, maybe? Whole lot of brooding going on. I don't know if it would have worked. Powder Monkey, he does succeed in blowing up the ship. That's the crazy thing. They actually blow up the ship again. Idiots. Himself included. Yeah, because he got his foot caught in some ropes and couldn't dive off the ship. And the scene in there, very like they could have done another take because it looks like he accidentally, very on purposely, gets his foot caught in the ropes. It wasn't very deft as far as the stunt work, I guess, goes. So Black Pirate does not notice this because he's busy trying to sneak the princess and her handmaid off the ship. I don't know how he wouldn't have heard an explosion except for it's a silent movie. So apparently they don't hear things in the silent movies either. So he's trying to sneak the princess and the handmaid off the ship. And they take a moment to have one of those little romantic moments where we, as the viewer, are like, hey, maybe you want to hurry up a little bit? There's time to plan your life together later. You're kind of in a hurry right now. But no, they take some time, do a little kissy-kissy. Maybe they don't kiss. Maybe they just, they think they're about to kiss, right? Yeah, so the lieutenant, he sees this whole thing, and he says one of his dudes to go bring him back. And then they put Black Pirate on trial for breaking the deal. They sentence him to walking the plank. Yes, plank walking, which, as we all know, wasn't really a thing. But he's going to make the best of it. And I'm not exactly sure where the plank walking came in. I don't think this was the first ones to do it. That may be a Treasure Island thing. I'll have to read it again. So the trick to it is tying the guy's hands behind his back so he can't swim as easily, right? Because otherwise he just walks off and he'll just swim. So they do this, and the princess, she gets her nuts up, and I don't know if that's a phrase. She tries to sneak a dagger to him to cut the rope. So she goes up and kisses him on the cheek and surreptitiously hands him a dagger. But they're caught by the lieutenant. It's a healthy thing to try, though, because it means that they're both working on the relationship. You know, she came to his aid when needed. He came to her aid also when needed. And that's important. If you can't count on each other to try and save your life when you're about to walk the plank, it might be time for some couples therapy. That's all I'm saying. So McTavish takes the knife, and then, remember, he's the good guy in disguise here. McTavish takes the knife, and then in a gesture that nobody thinks is weird somehow, he places it blade up in the front of his belt, which is the way, of course, that you carry a knife. So that if you bend over to pick up something that you dropped, you stab yourself in the gut. Everybody carries the knife point up right in the front of their belt. It's a perfectly normal and reasonable way to carry a knife. In a way, I mean, you could bend over to tie your shoe. You're going to give yourself an appendectomy. It's ridiculous. So then he gets behind Black Pirate to put a blindfold on him. And just thank goodness this scene is shot from the back. As you can see, Black Pirate's hands moving up and down on the blade, sticking up from McTavish's belt. Right. Because if they shot it from the front, we'd have all just wondered how this somehow homoerotic scene stayed in the movie. But, pre-code, pre-Hays Code. So Black Pirate then walks the plank, not letting anybody know that now his hands are cut, his ties are cut. And he doesn't come up, so he looks dead. Then he just swims around to the back of the ship, because he has hands untied. McTavish takes the princess back to her quarters and guards her to wait for whatever comes next. He tells the lieutenant, leave her alone, or he'll walk the plank. And then he follows him into the galley to keep an eye on him. And again, they decided here, we need a little comic relief. So they do a little bit here where McTavish starts to fall asleep for no reason. And so he sets up all his blades. This dude does not know how to carry a knife. He sets up all his blades so that they're pointing at his neck and at his face, so that if he nods off, he'll poke himself awake, right? He'll might lose an eye or his jugular in the process, but he will definitely wake up. So he sticks a knife in the front, poking up under his chin, sticks one on the sides, so if he nods his head to the left or the right, poking himself in the ear. I guess it's a way to stay awake, but it doesn't seem like a very sound plan. And that is what passed for comedy in 1926, apparently, in these films. Oh, boy, I think they could have used some Chaplin writing on this film. Anyway, I like the film, but the comedy leaves something to be desired. Cut to the next day. It's almost noon. Only the lieutenant knows that the ransom ship isn't coming back because nobody heard the giant explosion that was visible from the ship. Everyone else, they're all leaned over the sundial, waiting for the noon deadline to arrive. Though I'm pretty sure that if you lean over a sundial, it doesn't tell the time very well. Yeah, stand back, genius. It's a sundial. So noon arrives, and the crew gets ready to set sail. The lieutenant, he goes to collect the princess. McTavish tries to stop him and gets knocked out with a pistol butt to the head. Now we cut away to the Black Pirate. Now he's with a bunch of soldiers in a galley rowing for the pirate ship, right? Because he walked the plank, he swam, and managed to swim to land, I guess. They don't really tell us that part. But he's got a bunch of soldiers in a galley rowing for the pirate ship. Incidentally, their rowing technique looks terrible. I don't know how they were getting anywhere. Also, the ship battle is the scene. This is the one that was shot in Catalina Island. So they're actually out on the water at this point. Like real water. Outdoors water. But the rowing technique, I don't know how they got anywhere. It looks really, really bad. They need a Yale rowing coach or something to help them. The scenes, they cut back and forth between the galley and the lieutenant trying to get handsy with the princess. And you can just tell that he's not going to meet her needs first, you know? He's not that kind of guy. He's not going to be a good boyfriend, like I said. So Black Pirate, he fires a cannon from the galley, takes out the mast of the pirate ship with one shot. The pirate ship fires back, and the soldiers purposely sink the galley to make it look like they've been defeated. It's a ruse. A ruse, as they say. The whole crew of soldiers, they dive under the water and swim towards the pirate ship. Since underwater filming wasn't really possible at this time, they didn't have waterproof cameras and things. What they did is they actually put them on fly rigs and had them fly through the air making swimming motions. They filmed that from below and ahead and then used lighting to make it look like they were underwater. And I have to say, it looked pretty legit the first time I watched it. And then I found out that's how they did it, and I went back and it looked totally fake, but pretty crafty. So then the big final hand-to-hand combat scene comes up. McTavish, he's woken up, and he's sneaking the princess out. At the same time, the lieutenant is trying to get to her, and Black Pirate gets back on the ship, and they all end up meeting in the same place. Black Pirate, he chokes out the lieutenant WWE style, which is great, and then he uses his body as a shield when the other pirates show up and start shooting. Nice. Then a 1-on-12 sword fight ensues. So I'm going to guess in the 1-on-12 sword fight, they went a little bit more with the Hollywood style of fencing rather than the legit real style of fencing, which would be impossible when you're fighting 12 dudes at the same time. The rest of the soldiers, they've reached the ship. The rest of Black Pirate's domestic soldiers, they've reached the ship, and they're boarding to even up the odds. The fight begins on the deck while Black Pirate fends off a ridiculous amount of dudes with swords below. Just like a ludicrous amount of dudes, and they're clanging all over the place, and he's somehow winning against all those dudes with swords. The soldiers up top, they're subduing the pirate crew, mostly by dogpiling on top of them. Seems like kind of a ham-fisted way of doing it, but it seems to work. They don't seem to have weapons or anything. They just fall on top of them. Then there's this really cool vertical pan shot of the soldiers lifting Black Pirate up from deck to deck like some weird vertical crowd surfing shot. And it's a cool, unique shot that was probably hard to do back then when they didn't have the equipment that we have now. That's a really interesting one. So the battle finishes. The governor shows up, and he seems to know everyone. He addresses the Black Pirate as Lord Duke, and the princess, she gets all excited. Turns out he's the Duke of Arnoldo. And she's like, hell yeah, he's got a title. He then proposes marriage to her on the spot because it's a movie. And look, we all knew this was going to happen, right? It's how all these old movies end. He proposes. She looks all weepy and then does this weird floaty backwards walk. Like, I'm not sure why. She didn't go, it's not like a modern rom-com where she'd go, yes, yes. No, she just gets all weepy looking and then does this weird, like, moonwalk backwards. Not sure why. I think she might have beat Michael Jackson to the punch on this one by almost 60 years with the moonwalk. Whatever the case, it looks really dumb. He runs to her and they embrace. Now, fun fact here, this is the scene where they're about to kiss, right? This scene is a cameo appearance by Douglas Fairbanks' wife, Mary Pickford. She didn't want him smooching on another chick, so she appears in this one scene just to do the kiss. Yeah, the fact that you can't tell that's a different woman, what can I say? All white people look the same, I guess. But you really can't tell unless you know what you're looking for. So look for that. When they do the kiss thing, different actress. That's Mary Pickford right there. McTavish, he decides that they should have the buried treasure as a wedding gift. Pretty sure they don't need it. He's a duke. She's a princess, but whatever. I guess it's better than a Bed Bath & Beyond gift card. So good for him for trying. And he tries to give him the key to the treasure, and they like totally ignore him. They stand there in this embrace that's like weirdly still, like Madame Tussauds wax museum still, where they're standing in each other's arms. Not a caress, nothing, just frozen. But I don't know, strange, very strange. So anyway, McTavish sits down and waits for them to come to, and for some reason starts falling asleep again. It's a big joyous moment. Dude starts nodding off. Either he's got a heroin problem or he needs to be checked for narcolepsy because he's falling asleep at very strange times. But of course, this is just an opportunity to rehash the same gag from before. He sticks a knife under his chin to poke himself in the face if he falls asleep. Honestly, I don't think anybody would begrudge the dude a nap at this point. You know, he did get in the head earlier with the butt of a pistol. He's like super old. He could have a concussion. Maybe he shouldn't go to sleep. But either way, I think the gift could, wait a little bit. Then at the end of the film, of course, we get one last shot of the model ship sailing off into the sunset and the end. So there it is, friends. That is The Black Pirate. If you haven't watched it yet, definitely go watch it. It is a fun little adventure film, and so much historic stuff, both in the film and on the back end of the film, in the behind-the-scenes stuff happening, that it's a good one. It's one that every pirate fan should see. So all of my resources that I found for this, plus the videos and all that kind of stuff, are going to be all in the show notes at underthecrossbones.com/171. And that is our show for today. Friends, thank you once again for tuning in. I absolutely appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this. I can't say I'll be doing it all that often because it was incredibly time consuming. Yes, while you have been listening for just over an hour or so here, this took about 20 hours to put together with all the research and the writing and the recording. It was like a part-time job this week just to do this episode. So I won't say I won't do it again. I won't say I will do it again. We'll find out how it goes. But if you liked it, come and tell me. Shoot me an email, phil@underthecrossbones.com, or hook up with us on Facebook, facebook.com/underthecrossbones, or on Twitter, twitter.com/undercrossbones. Let me know what you thought. If you liked it, if you hated it, then we know what we can do in the future. But next week, we get back to our regular style shows. Eric Anderson from Stormfront is going to be on the show. Following week, Liddell Joubert from Stable Seas is going to be on. We're going to be talking a different angle on the modern piracy stuff. Not just Somalia. It's a bunch of other places, including the Philippines, which was weird. So those are coming up. I've got 4 more interviews on the books on the old calendar to get done in the next week or two. So lots of cool, fun stuff coming up here. And that's it. Thanks for hanging in there with me and listening to me yak about The Black Pirate. Go click on the show notes and you can watch the movie right now. Other than that, I'll see you next week.